All right. Well, hello everyone. I'm Jake Wyman with the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and welcome to this week's edition of Capital Clarity, dealing with illegal immigration in the Gem State. Not many know, but there are 40,000 illegal immigrants in Idaho, unknown people with unknown pasts. Meanwhile, Holland and Hart, a large immigration firm, is giving presentations to employers who knowingly employ illegals to explain what they can do to keep their slave labor. This includes lying to government officials about the immigration status of said workers. Rick Narabout, CEO of the Idaho Dairymen's Association, is advocating that the legislature ignores what Idahoans have been asking for because it could harm the income of his work. Even Power County in southern Idaho is still listed as a sanctuary county, which protects illegals from being deported by ICE. For a state where 2 out of every 3 voters cast their ballot for Donald Trump, this is unacceptable. These actions are a slap in the face to everyone who voted for secure borders and to maintain the rule of law. We need to end the $405 million in taxpayer-funded welfare for illegals, control illegal entry at the big state level, and stop illegal employment by Big Ag. Our first speaker has discussed this at length. Our very own Legislative Affairs Director, Fred Birnbaum, has been advocating for stronger measures to protect against illegal immigration for years. Just last year, a clip went viral of his testimony in favor of a House memorial calling on Congress to hold President Joe Biden accountable for his failure to enforce immigration laws. Please welcome Fred Birnbaum.
Technology is a wonderful thing. Wait. Okay, I hope that's working. I guess it's afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Fred Birnbaum, Idaho Freedom Foundation. Can you hear me in the back? Okay, good. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I can stand over here. Maybe I'm going to be out of camera though. He'll take care of that. So I'm going to be brief. I'm going to be followed by 2 representatives from the Idaho House of Representatives who are doing great work on this issue. I'll start by asking a question. How many of you have heard the phrase or the statement, America is a nation of immigrants? I think everyone has. Really what that statement should say, or really implies, is we're a nation of legal immigrants. And I think that's a very important distinction for 4 reasons that I'm going to talk about briefly. I think the first one is, we are also a nation that believes in the rule of law. So if someone's first act is to cross the border illegally, how can we then expect that person or people, what message are we sending with respect to them respecting our laws? In fact, we're condoning an illegal act, but we're expecting every other citizen. So that's one reason that we should not be for illegal immigration, the rule of law. The other thing that I think we have to keep in mind is that, of course, we saw what happened under Biden, and we characterize that as treasonous because he was wantonly violating the law. And how do we know that's true? We know that's true because the law didn't change when he became president. The U.S. Congress hasn't updated federal immigration laws in many, many years. Yet all of a sudden we had a flood of illegal immigrants. And then, of course, when President Trump took office, at the border, these are the ones that were sort of given presumptive asylum, that was reduced to a trickle. So that was a deliberate act by the Biden administration. And thankfully, that's being reversed. But that doesn't mean that everyone who came here illegally is just going to walk back out of the country. And so that's why Idaho has a role to play and the Idaho legislature has a role to play. Because there are many things, and we all see this as adults and as parents, that incentivize and disincentivize folks. If you tell your children one thing and that they're going to get punished, but then you don't follow through, you're basically sending them the message that that's not that important or you don't care. So there are bills before the legislature, which these good legislators will talk about that disincentivize the breaking of our laws. And we're now in a situation where we have budget constraints, or they'll be coming. And we believe that to the extent we provide social services, they should be for U.S. citizens first. We cannot afford for people who've come across illegally to partake in these services. And one, that there is the cost issue, there's the moral issue of favoring our own citizens. And in order to do that, you can't just say that. You have to change the law in some cases. And so what we want Idaho to be is not a magnet for illegal immigrants. We don't control federal law, but there are state laws that can be put into place, or laws that exist now, that can disincentivize illegal immigrants from either coming here and or staying here. And so I'm going to be brief. I'll wrap it up, and I guess I'll go back to Jake. We'll see which representative, who's coming up next. Representative Bruce Skaug, you follow me. Thank you.
One, two, three, test. Can you hear me in the back? All right. I tend to have a soft voice sometimes, especially after a day like yesterday and today, where yesterday I didn't get a break until 2:30, no lunch, no, just you run through the restroom and then on to the next meeting. But we had a productive day yesterday on a lot of bills. First, thank you to Capital Clarity for having these meetings, educational for all of us. I know people watch online. And I'm thankful to Idaho Freedom Foundation, especially a couple of years ago, they brought in a lady named Chloe Cole. And that changed Idaho law to where we outlawed those type of awful surgeries and procedures on our children. It's the toughest criminal law in the nation on that subject. And we owe a lot of that to the Chloe Cole, who you brought here, convinced our legislators to vote the right way. So double thank yous, I'll never forget. And I thank you that you send us Fred Birnbaum, who is an intelligent, smarter than I fellow, but he encourages us, talks honestly with us about bills. Even when we disagree, he'll tell me, okay, this is the other side of it. And we get along real well. He's helped me many times and on significant bills. So the bill we have before you is started out as H-83. It's been amended in the Senate on immigration. Last session at the very end, Jaron Crane and I brought a bill to make it a criminal offense to be an illegal in Idaho, because we're so dissatisfied with our federal government, as we have been for many years, on dealing with illegals. They weren't doing anything. Our own police were blocked from even asking questions about if you're legal when they're investigating a crime. This is a problem. We would have roving groups of retail thieves who would come in a group through my town of Nampa, other towns, especially southern Idaho along the 84 corridor. Police would stop and arrest them, and they would pretend not to speak the language of English. Well, who are you? I have no ID. And we couldn't get them into the system at all to track them when they were actually bands of thieves going through the country. So they were very hard to work those cases. So this bill was brought at the end of last year so that we could get people in the system that we suspect of crimes, and it didn't have time to get through the Senate. It was at the very end that we got that. We were copying a Texas law. So we brought that back, worked on it over the summer. Jaron Crane was the point man, and we took this through the Idaho House, flew through very well. And what it does is it criminalizes being an illegal, but it has good language in it. You can't just walk down the street and say to my former Marine and barber, who speaks Spanish not as his first language, but his second, raised in America, born here. You can't just walk up to him and say, hey, you look like you're an illegal, show me your papers. That's wrong. We don't want that in America or in Idaho. But this bill allows the police, if someone is being investigated for a crime, convicted of a crime, or arrested for a crime, that then they can look into their past as far as where are you from. That's proper. Now, they don't have to be convicted, just being investigated for a crime. Crime is misdemeanor or felony. That's not a traffic ticket. We want the criminals out first. That is what we're all after. That's what President Trump is after. Let's get these criminals out because they are here and they came in unabated into our country for 4 years. and probably beyond that quite a bit. So we're working to do that. It's just a misdemeanor the first time. Second time, it's a felony, and then you're out of here. And this bill, we combined with the Senate. The Senate had a bill that only went after the worst of the worst criminals. Well, we want all the criminals out if you're illegal. So we combined that bill, and it's a pretty good one as amended in the Senate, and it's on the governor's desk now. I don't think it's been signed yet. 83 as amended in the Senate. So I'll hit some highlights. It's called the Immigration Cooperation Enforcement Act. Pro Tem came up with that ICE Act. I thought that was pretty good. 83 as amended with an S. So 83 AAS. So don't look at the old original one, but the amended one. And if you would, you could encourage the governor to sign that. I think he will sign that. So a person who is an alien commits an offense if the person enters or attempts to enter this state at any unlawful location or not port of entry or just being here. It's a misdemeanor. Then they have the defense if, hey, you charged me with this, but I was not being investigated for any crime. I was not involved at all. Then you can't get a conviction on that. That's fair because we don't want people walking down the street and just saying, you look like you're illegal, so we're going to start looking at your papers. No papers, please, community in Idaho. And we require now that our state, our law enforcement, and some of them balked at this a little bit, will cooperate with federal authorities for deportation in every way. That's part of this bill. And then there's an enhancement if they really are criminals convicted or if they were deported once and come back. There's an enhancement penalty setting minimum jail time for these illegals who are criminals or criminally related in some manner. And then we added this, and people are missing this point, but suppose there's the crime of grand theft and this crime also of being an illegal. The judge can't say, well, we're going to just hold off on the prosecutions until we hear from the feds on this. We have to go forward with it, our prosecutors and our judges. We can't slow it up to get the conviction. And that, I think, is important. So that's a highlight of that. It's going to the governor's desk. I think it will be signed. No, we're trying to do the right thing. This is a well-crafted bill, I believe. 3 of the 4 sponsors of it are attorneys, so I hope we did a good job. We'll see. So I'll be open to questions, I think, after our next speaker.
Please give it up. Oh, forgot about this. Please give it up again for Representative Bruce Skaug. So our final speaker is Representative Jordan Redman, a legislator who has fought so hard for the people that far-left domestic terrorists have threatened the safety of him and his family. Representative Redman is on the forefront of fighting against Big Ag and their practice of hiring illegals and for prohibiting welfare and other benefits given to illegals that reside here. Please welcome Representative Jordan Redman.
Well, thank you everyone for being here today. It's an honor to get to be here and speak a little bit on some of the bills that we're working on this year. I want to also, it's an honor to be up here with Bruce because I have so much respect for Bruce and what they're doing. Both Bruce and Jaron on immigration can't be understated. I do live up in North Idaho, District 3, and that was one of the big issues that I heard a lot from constituents in North Idaho and around the state was the immigration issues that we're seeing currently in our country. As we know, under the Biden administration, there has been a mass immigration of people that are here illegally. And so last year, we ran a bill called House Bill 615. And what that bill would do is it eliminated non-emergency medical as well as some welfare benefits such as housing, food assistance for people that were here illegally. That bill was held up in committee last year. I don't remember the vote, but it got held in committee. So this year, a little bit of a shakeup in the legislature. We brought it back. It was House Bill 135, and we were able to advance it out of the Health and Welfare and off of our floor. So actually, there's a hearing on it today in the Senate Health and Welfare Committee, House Bill 135 at 3 p.m. So the goal is obviously to keep that bill advancing. And again, I think the thought behind it is, we don't want to make Idaho a magnet, giving out welfare benefits to people that are here illegally. And part of that too is we have a lot of citizens here in Idaho that need those benefits. And so if we're allowing for people that are here illegally, have broken the law to be here, to access those benefits, I don't think we're doing a good job to the taxpayers for allowing that. And I would also say, it doesn't prohibit other nonprofits from allowing that. That was one thing that came up a lot, was the human element. And I don't disagree with, like helping people out. However, there's a number of nonprofits that would be happy to help different people. We don't want to make Idaho a magnet to have more people flooding our state that are here illegally. And I think we have Washington and Oregon that would gladly have those welfare benefits for those folks. Another bill I worked on this year, and haven't got a hearing quite on it yet, but is House Bill 252, which is E-Verify, which is just verifying legal status here in the state of Idaho to be employed. A number of states have done that. We actually do it for our state government, and that is one that, again, hasn't had a hearing yet, but I think it's logical that we want to make sure that people are here working, wherever they're working, are here legally. And if they're not, and we're allowing for preferential treatment for people that are here illegally, it pulls away from our workforce and people that need to get jobs here. And I know that we have a lot of young people that are not working currently, and I think it gives them a little boost to be working. So again, I want to thank everyone for being here. I also really appreciate Fred. Fred is an awesome resource here in the Capitol. I talk to him quite frequently, and he has excellent knowledge. So I really do appreciate Fred. Now that Nicholas is gone, you can't leave. So that I'm happy to, when the other speakers, stand for any questions. So thank you. Come up, okay.
Yeah. Does anyone have questions? Would you guys mind coming to the front for the microphone? Pass it back and forth for the stream purposes.
I'm curious. We hear a lot about big ag abusing this, and yet big ag is made up of a lot of separate entities. And being in agriculture, I'd like to give credit to those areas of ag that are absolutely meticulous about using guest worker visas and whatnot. And I'd like to see more effort to pinpoint which areas of ag. Like apparently the dairy industry is abusing the situation. But has there been any effort to, instead of just lumping agriculture all together, of holding up models of people like the hops growers and whatnot, who are very meticulous about getting work, the guest visas and whatnot? I'd really like to see that happen instead of just lambasting ag in general.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if, I've never tried to lambast, ag. I think that agriculture is a great part of our economy. And I think like with the E-Verify system, we would just verify that people are here legally or on a work visa. And so I think that's very healthy for our economy.
Where are you from, ma'am? Where are you from?
Oh, I'm from Parma.
All right. Hi, Parma. I grew up in Jerome, Idaho, in ag country. And so I understand the problem, maybe more than some, that though I live here in Nampa now. So ag will tell you they are restricted by the federal government how much they can dig in. They can't dig into the authenticity of the papers. If they look right when an employee applies, then they can't do anything about it. They can't go further, or they get in trouble with the federal government, right?
Yeah.
So what are they supposed to do? If they see the papers are not legal, or somebody calls them and says, "Hey, hire my friend who's illegal," they say no. Most of the time, they say no. They don't want to mess with it. They don't want to get themselves in trouble.
Yeah.
And the difference between dairy and regular ag right now is, what do you call that? I forget the problem. N1 or what is it?
I forget what the designation.
I forget the name, and I apologize. The
The
guest worker visa.
They have a specific.
Most ag can get that, but dairymen can't, and I'm not sure why. I think it's because they're year round, and so they've gone to Congress multiple times, and they've lobbied, said, get us the guest worker visas so we can have people come for a period of time and then go back home.
Yeah.
And they can't get it through. It's always blocked. And so the last time they lobbied, they talked to the congressmen, the senators, and they said, look, where we get all Republicans and Trump, we get the Senate, we get the House, then we'll push this through. So I'm hoping for our ag industry and dairy that gets pushed through, because legal workers kept in line with when they have to go home. That's great if we need them. So that's what I know. Hope that helps.
I'll just add one quick point, and it sort of follows up on Representative Skaug. And ag is a huge backbone of the state, and I'm very much against painting with a broad brush. I think we all are. We did see the most, I would say, the strongest support for the current posture from the dairymen, and to their credit, or at least to an explanation, they need year-round people. Obviously, cows have to be milked every day. Crops can be seasonal. So the structure of the current system favors ag that uses seasonal workers to the detriment of the dairymen. Our concern, though, was that they were opposing steps to really stem the flow of illegals as it was existing, because their concern was that, you know, their workforce would disappear. And there's a solution that's better than just saying, gee, we can't get year-round visas, so we have to use illegals. I mean, it sets up the wrong notion. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's very important not to paint with a broad brush.
What's happened to the children, the missing children? Have any of them been found, or what's happened to them? All the missing kids that came over with the illegals.
I'm not sure if any of us can really answer that. The question was about children were actually left at the border in some cases without parents. They were actually brought to the border and just dumped during the Biden administration, or some were just absorbed and potentially trafficked. I don't have an answer. I mean, I think that's certainly something that the Trump administration is thwarting now, since the border at the checkpoints has been reduced to a trickle. The areas that people were sneaking through, I imagine that they now have more resources, but unless my colleagues up here have an answer, I mean, that was one of the real tragedies. You saw children that were not just minors, but 2, 3, 4 years old, just essentially abandoned at the border. And that was facilitated, by the Biden administration, and the cartels essentially were running the southern side of the border. But I don't know what's happened to those children.
I spoke with our Attorney General, Raul Labrador, when he came back from Congress and asked, why couldn't you solve this problem with immigration? And he talked about why he couldn't vote for the bills that were coming forward in Congress on immigration at that time, because of all the trafficking that went on. And at that time, it wasn't much in the news about the human trafficking and the tragedies to the children. He knew about that and was trying to get the right bill through. So I hope this new Congress will actually act. And I hate to be a pessimist. I'm an optimist about our House here and our Senate, but I'm kind of a pessimist about them getting things done there this year. I hope they will on this.
Yeah, I would just echo those same sentiments. I don't know exactly, but that was one of the biggest issues that we saw down at the southern border was the human crimes and what was happening to young children. And so that's another reason why we have to secure our border.
Okay. Does this work? Yeah. Okay. What? It's for the stream, so it will be a little bit louder. Yeah. So do I sit here? Yeah. Okay. The unaccompanied children are not unaccompanied. The cartels are controlling them. They won't tell you that. I've studied this a lot. And they're farmed out to sponsors, which are sometimes no more than a person that works for an NGO or some organization. I'm not going to say they're all in danger, but most of them are. They farm them out for labor, for sex, for just whatever. And no, this is human trafficking. So this is a big problem. And when you see these kids walking, there's somebody watching them. Always. They have no freedom. And they can't say anything. It's tragic.
My name is Lydia. I'm from Brazil. I come here legally, following the laws, and I'm sick what see in the United States and especially in Idaho. My question is, what can I do to help to stop illegal immigration? Because I don't want these states and like the other states I saw, I come from California, it's so sad. So what can I help you guys pass the bill to stop illegal immigration?
First, welcome to America. By and by America, I mean Idaho. So, part of my prayers each morning when I pray is that God would bring the righteous into our state and expel the wicked. And you're the type of people I can tell that are answers to my prayers. So, what can you do? Well, help elect people, whether you can vote or not. Help elect people that will do the kind of bills that this man's carrying on illegal immigration, and be real vocal about that and get out. And so that's main thing. Support. Comes election time, and we can do Facebook memes and things, but if you don't send that guy $10 that you want to get elected or gal to help put up a yard sign or encourage neighbors to vote for them or pray for them, it doesn't do much good. Just Facebook. I guess Facebook does something, but just encourage others in the right thinking. We welcome legal immigration, and that needs fixed badly, but we can't have the illegal immigration. It will destroy our country. We can't house the whole world and keep America.
I think some of the best proponents for legal immigration are people just like yourself that did it the right way. And I think, when you have folks that are doing it illegally and cutting the line, it's a total discredit to you and how you did it. And so I think just telling your story about that and how there is a path forward, but let's do it by, the law and order that we have established in this country. So I appreciate you being here.
I don't really have anything to add. I think they covered it. Obviously, understand there's a distinction between what the state of Idaho can do and what the federal government can do. And what these gentlemen talked about is what we can do as a state. But a lot of those larger problems have to be dealt with at the level of the U.S. Congress.
Tell a story.
I have a niece that met a professor from Germany when she was a student at the University of Idaho, and they married. And he followed the law and went back to Germany, hoping to come back. And they now have 3 children in Germany. Time's passing. He wants to be a U.S. citizen in the worst way. Has a good job over there, but they can't get into America legally without spending more money than they can come up with. And he loves President Trump more than most of our own state does. He wants me to send Trump merchandise because it drives the German liberals crazy when he displays it. So for my nephew, I hope we get some of those things worked out.
Do we have any idea what kind of numbers are here in the Treasure Valley? And also, do you have any knowledge of which NGOs are helping these folks find housing and supporting them, basically?
I personally don't have a whole lot of that information. I mean, I've heard a number of different statewide numbers on how many people are here. However, I don't know exactly which NGOs are kind of facilitating that personally.
And we can't get the numbers because we have not been allowed in our law enforcement or government to verify who's legal and not legal in the state. So how do we come up with those accurate numbers? We know there's a problem. We know certain industries have illegal aliens working for them, but they're not allowed to do any reporting themselves. I blame the feds on all this.
Census.
First of all, thanks, gentlemen, for showing up today. I appreciate it. My question is, and I bring 20 years experience with me with Department of Homeland Security. We don't have a CBP here, do we? Do we have a Customs Border Protection agency here in Idaho? Do we have an ICE?
We have a holding facility in Rigby. I think that's it for hardly any beds.
So there's no ICE, which is Immigration Customs Enforcement. There's no ICE here either.
I don't know.
There is an ICE. Where are they located? I know there's inspectors at the airport that do inspections.
I've seen the office.
I don't know. I don't think that would be an ICE.
Yeah, I worked at the prison here, and they did come pick up illegals.
Okay, so my question is, if you have a local sheriff that picks up some illegals, where does he deposit them? Where does he put them?
In Kootenai County, they go to the county jail
Okay.
until they're picked up federally.
Okay, and then what's the time frame on that?
You know, I could ask them. I know right now up in Kootenai County they're at kind of at capacity right now. So
With illegals?
well, it's a number of both, right? 'Cause
Okay.
there's folks that go for just ordinary crimes, and then there are folks that are here illegally that get housed there. I know that they try to get the feds to come in as soon as possible, but
Okay.
they are having an issue with keeping everyone there right now.
Okay, and who pays for that housing? Does it come out of the county, or or did it get reimbursed by the feds?
It comes out of the county for the most part, but let me back up, say thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
And where do you live here in Idaho?
Jim County.
Well, there's crazy people over there.
We're gun toters, I'll tell you that.
Better be careful. I was a young prosecutor when I was a young man, and I'd be out on a search warrant the night with the police and the sheriff's office, and over the radio, we're going out to a search warrant, they'd get the name and they'd call and say, put a hold on that guy. Oh, okay, we didn't know they were listening to what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the way things were used to be. The last 4 years especially, our county jail in Canyon County, they're not allowed to do anything. They reported, nothing would happen. And now for the first time, they're starting.
Is that even today?
Not today.
Okay.
Now, ICE is starting to intervene with the calls and showing up. There was a Kootenai sheriff that told me, hey, for the first time, I'm getting calls for holds. And so things are happening in these areas.
Good.
I spoke to an ICE agent. We happened to work out at the same gym, and he had told me under Biden, he was like.
So there's ICE, you're talking about an ICE here?
It was actually in Utah, and
Okay.
he was like the Maytag repairman. He really had nothing to do for the 4 years under Biden. Now they've had him working overtime,
Mhm.
about he said some weeks, 7 days a week. And what they were doing under the Biden administration is they weren't actually providing federal monies that the ICE could issue detainers to put people who had holds in local jails. And so they were basically stopped from it. So the process is restarted. I just don't know to what extent it occurs in Idaho, but I do know that in states closer to the border, they are picking people up and taking them back across the border. So it's happening now. I can't give you specifics on Idaho, though.
So what would be a starting point for, let's say, a smaller sheriff's department within a smaller county? What's his starting point as far as the illegals? I mean, where does he go? Who does he talk to? There has to be you have to initiate it somewhere. So what would that be?
Under the law that is on the governor's desk, it instructs and it demands that our law enforcement cooperate with ICE immediately, talks about how they have to report and get that enforced. And there's not going to be any orders, regardless of feds, that are going to stop that. Maybe we'll be challenged in federal court, but I think we wrote a pretty good law that will get through with the new administration and the new judges that are starting to rise up. I don't know if that answered your question.
It's close. It's close.
I think in Kootenai County, our sheriff, Bob Norris, has done an excellent job, and he's been kind of on the forefront of this. He actually came from California and saw a lot of the issues that California saw. So he's been at the forefront of this, and I know he is getting reimbursement from the feds on housing. I don't know if it's enough right now for him, but he would be an excellent resource for any other sheriffs to reach out to. Is Bob Norris up in Kootenai County that could probably give some insight and some guidance.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Chuck Strong. I'm from Nampa. I'm a retired Air Force officer. My question is that, let me get something straight here. Essentially, what the dairymen are saying is, who is going to milk our cows if we can't hire this cheap labor? How is that any different than what the South said is, who's going to pick our cotton if we don't have this cheap labor? That blows my mind. Where are the incentives for the dairy farmers here in this state to be able to go and not be taxed on each employee, say $100,000 in profit, instead of spending $400 million on illegals in this country, that money from this state, that money could be used to be an incentive to the dairy farmers to not be taxed so that they can afford to hire legal Americans to do the work, both legal residents and citizens of this country. I have no idea why this is allowed to continue. The other question I have is why is it not part of this law that's going on the governor's desk that if somebody is pulled over and has a violation, that they can't be investigated at that point? That's a violation of law too. If they don't have a driver's license, if they don't have insurance, how is that not a violation of law that they can't be investigated in that situation and removed from this state? Why? Why is that not in there? No, I like it. It just doesn't go far enough.
Thank you. That was a compromise, and I supported that compromise. Not for infractions, because infractions are not a crime. You're not a criminal if you speed 10 miles an hour over. That's not a crime. You're not considered a criminal when you pay an infraction. However, there are things like a misdemeanor. If you don't sign your registration in your car, that's a misdemeanor. Why? I don't know. I don't think it should be a misdemeanor, but that would be considered one that you could cite them for being illegal if that is a misdemeanor or is a misdemeanor. So any misdemeanor, that's a crime. Any felony, that's a crime for if you're being investigated for that. That takes care of the criminals that we're after, anybody around them. So if the guy gets a ticket, that's the lower tier. We have to start where Trump is starting with the criminals.
But that's where they first encounter the law. That's one of the first times they encounter the law is when they violate our traffic laws.
Indeed, a lot of those traffic laws are misdemeanors. Reckless, inattentive driving, those are misdemeanors.
Okay, what about not having a license and not having insurance?
Misdemeanors.
Both of them?
It's been a while since I prosecuted, I believe so.
So you need to present yourself to the court if you don't have insurance, and they're not going to present themselves to the court.
There goes the warrant.
Because they're here illegally.
Well, that's up to our prosecutors how they follow up, but they should. Sorry, no traffic tickets for speeding.
Do we have any other? Yeah, of course.
Thanks.
I'll just briefly address the other question on the dairy industry. So, I mean, I think it's a threefold problem, and I'm going to try to be charitable here. It's probably not the most desirable work for a lot of young people. There are a lot of young people who don't want to do any work at all for whatever reason, and that's probably not high on their interest list. The thing that we mentioned earlier is that it's year-round, so the seasonal visa that works for seasonal crops hasn't worked. So I do think for the dairymen, if there's a federal solution, that would be a good thing. But I would also say that what's allowed to happen is inappropriate, which is essentially this industry has become dependent on too many illegal immigrants, and that's just not something that's sustainable. So one way or another, in the next 12 to 24 months, we hope that's brought to a head, because that just sort of closing a blind eye and saying, well, these people presented fake papers, we can't do anything, and we're just going to allow it. It's not and we would agree, it's not a sustainable future-oriented policy. It just won't work. I mean, to the extent that I think every nation has to do its own drudgery, and yes, that's not the first job I would want to do, is muck manure, but that's something that someone has to do, and we can't just look for illegals to do that. So I think your point is taken, and there are potential policy solutions that don't put dairymen out of business.
Well, why not employees of these dairymen not be taxed, Idaho tax, for working in that industry?
Well,
what would be wrong with that? That would be an incentive. They wouldn't be taxed here.
I'll tell you what, we'll sidebar on that. I mean, there are definite solutions. I don't know if giving them tax abatement is one of them, but there's certainly solutions other than just the current status quo on that.
Hi, my name's Scott from Kuna. Thanks for your bill. And like you said, it's a start. I was curious. I'm glad you brought up the NGOs because I followed that a lot too. And thank you for this border security, wherever he is. Thank you. We've got Lieutenant Colonel Pete Chambers, Michael Yon, Ann Vandersteel, who's a reporter, talking about the Darien Gap and how much money we pay, billions, to these NGOs, Catholic Charities, Israeli PACs, and I know that's a touchy subject, and I'm Christian, but it's true. I'm just curious, how many of these organizations here in Idaho are you looking at as far as if they're housing illegals, they're bringing in money based on our taxpayer monies, billions. How many organizations here in Idaho, and I know what happens in churches here for sure, how are you going about that and holding them accountable? You're talking about dairies, but I think that's more important because it's such a big money maker, and it's our taxpayer monies going to these organizations under the guise of, bringing in, helping people, which I'm all for, but doing it right and not through our taxpayer monies like that. So I don't know, that's a long question, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think with 135, it does address that to some point because, it came up on the floor that if there's a food bank that's providing these services, if it's dollars that you or I had given to that food bank, there's no issue. However, if it's state tax-paying dollars, there is an issue there, and that's not allowed. So, as a state legislature, we can really address, the state funds and the federal funds. However, if there's a group of people that want to give to something like this, that's probably not really our place to step in.
Absolutely, but this is not people donating this is billions of dollars going to organizations through our taxpayer monies. That's the difference. I'm all for what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But this is completely different.
Yeah,
this is completely different.
And my hope is that with 135's passage, that would stem some of that, right? Or hopefully a lot of that for, again, the non-emergency, some of those welfare benefits, and because they would have to show and track that.
Okay.
I'm not personally aware of an NGO in Idaho getting state funds and using them for those purposes. If they are, then we'll go after them, but I need to know.
Well, the organizations that I just mentioned are two.
Which were again?
Catholic Charities and the Israeli PAC. There are two of them, but it's through a lot of churches. I'm not just isolating those two organizations, but Catholic Charities is a big one, very big.
Okay. Well, bring me something from Idaho.
Yeah, I'm sure she'd be happy to help too with that.
Something from Idaho receiving state dollars.
Okay.
That's what we can affect.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
More of a solution, I think, rather than I don't agree with the idea of legalizing like tax evasion or that sort of thing. No tax evasion or legalizing that or whatever, but rather incentivizing people to work. Is we have to reduce the social programs that we have, and as far as people not wanting to get to work, young people not wanting to work, and all those things, that is an ill of the people in our state and the families, and the only way to fix that really is to just reduce the handing out of free money in general, and there are programs now, I guess, if people want to not work or whatever and just expect everybody else to support them. We have programs for minor offense criminals who basically, minor offenses, they don't stay in jail, they just go pick up trash on the road or whatever. There's programs, for that. Why not have programs for people who need the services of the state, but they don't do anything? Put those people to milking cows. I don't know. There's got to be a lot more in solutions other than, incentivizing the business who is making money. You need to incentivize people to work, and you can't do that by continually giving them free stuff.
So thank you for the question. It was about disincentivizing people from, disincentivizing sitting on the couch. Actually, these two legislators standing next to me supported a bill that I think would have had a major impact. So there are a lot of free services free to them, not free to the taxpayer. And Medicaid was expanded to cover able-bodied, for example. And there was a very strong bill that passed the House that didn't make it through the Senate. So I think the legislature, for the most part, has tried, not successfully yet, maybe in some minor areas, to curb some of those programs. There is a lot of opposition to doing that, unfortunately, from the providers of those services just as much as the people receiving them. So the medical industry in Idaho is very heavily dependent on Medicaid and Medicare dollars. The big hospitals get over 50% of their gross revenue from Medicare and Medicaid. And I don't think the food stores get that much from SNAP and food stamps, but that's one of the challenges, honestly, that Congress is going to face. So some of the things that you're referring to are federally funded, and Medicaid, is, of course, is joint. But I think that is the next big thing in this country, which is reforming, broadly speaking, entitlements. And of course, there are people who have paid in things like Social Security their whole life. I'm pretty close there myself, which is distinct from people who are just getting something for nothing. And yes, I think to the extent you can push young people off those programs, you create more opportunities for them to work because they don't get something for nothing. They'll have to work. So, and the governor did sign 345, and that's, it's a step. It's a small step for Idaho, maybe a giant step for mankind.
With that bill, House Bill 345, it does have a work requirement in there for the expansion population, which is the able-bodied adults. Currently in our state, about 52% are not working that are on expansion, which again was passed by ballot initiative for the working poor. And so, that does have a work requirement in there to help stimulate people getting out and, kind of earning that benefit.
It kind of drives me nuts, the statement that there's nothing new under the sun 20 years ago was either Ron Paul or Milton Friedman said you can't have immigration in the state. So that's, but anyway, I see homeless people in Twin Falls. Saw a young Mexican girl I thought was being sex trafficked in Walmart at the male's restroom. And there's documentaries on homeless people, tent cities in Seattle and San Francisco. I could show you the parking lot in Twin Falls where people sleep in their cars. So we're creating a huge, desperate population once we cut off the welfare to the immigrants. Where are they going to get their food? There isn't the jobs. We gave all of our manufacturing to Chinese communist slaves a long time ago. So if you go into Walmart, you buy slave goods. There are more slaves in the world today than there ever have been. So anyway, what are we going to do when these people become desperate when you cut off their welfare money?
That's probably a question that you don't want to ask an elected official for. So no, I'm kidding. Well, let's start with just what the House bill, it's 135, I believe. That is cutting benefits to illegals. So I think to answer so it isn't cutting it to a broad swath of citizens. I mean, our view is they shouldn't be here, and I think the moral high ground is if you're here illegally, you shouldn't get free stuff. And I don't think the moral high ground is, gee, if you don't give them free stuff, they're desperate. I would suspect one of two things would happen. They would try to get it from non-governmental sources, or they would leave the state. And frankly, as I said in the opening, if your first act in coming to the U.S. is breaking our law on the border, I mean, I just don't think you have a moral claim to anything. I'm sorry. That's just how I feel.
I don't want them here, but we already have desperate people here living on sidewalks. And
well, I think if the people who are desperate and are on sidewalks are U.S. citizens, they're at least at the front of the welfare line ahead of people who are here illegally. And if we don't spend money on people here illegally, to the extent we're going to spend money on anyone, we can spend it on U.S. citizens.
There is 10 cities on sidewalks in Seattle.
Yep. Yeah, we can't solve all the problems, but thank you.
We have time for 2 more questions. So we'll get her. Okay.
I am on a school bus, and every day I see a lot of illegals. They can't even speak English. And I see the apartments, which are nice apartments, that they are being dropped off at. You know, I've heard comments, if they drop their phone and break it, they're not worried because they're going to get another free one. They're getting free medical, they're getting free lawyers, therapy, clothing, food, medical. I mean, I can't believe what they're getting. I have a stepdaughter who has cancer, and she's having a very hard time making it. She's in Arizona. And I see other people that I work with living in cars because they can't afford apartments. And they're going to nice apartments, sometimes brand new apartments. And I just wonder, I know it's coming out of our tax dollars. Now, I also notice a lot of people from the Ukraine are coming into this country. I work with somebody that paid $15,000 to fly into Mexico, brought his family here, and walked across the border. He's been here for 2 years. His wife is pregnant. He tells me how stupid Americans are. This is what I hear from him. And it kind of offends me because our tax dollars are paying for this. I asked him if he had insurance because his wife is pregnant again, and he said no. I said, how are you paying the hospital bills and the doctor bills? Your country made me a gift. I said, what is that gift? Health and welfare. So he is getting help. He's not paying for that hospital bill or the medical bills. And I wonder, I have to go through a background check to get that job. How do they, when they come into this country, walk across the border, how are we vetting them? How are they passing the background checks to even get those jobs? Who's helping them? I don't understand this. And, we're getting a lot of illegals where I work coming in there. And we can't even understand them sometimes speaking English. How are they getting in there, passing our background checks, getting these jobs? Now, I do feel sorry for them. I do. In a country that's at war, I understand it. They mind their country. They don't want their children or their wives killed. I understand that. But I think we are being very lax in this country, and we are opening ourselves up to a lot of things that, I see our citizens. I work with the vets too. I do the homeless stand downs where we help them get medical checks and all that. They are not entitled to what these people coming into our country are getting. And I do resent that. When it's our tax dollars, I think we should be taking care of our citizens.
Can I respond real quick? I think a lot of your points that you hit there are addressed in 135, and that we're not allowing for these welfare benefits for people that are here illegally because, as you said, we have a finite amount of resources, and people that are here legally should get those resources first, right? Or just should get those resources, right? And so by excluding some of those resources, I think that addresses that issue. And then as far as the employment, again, that's why I think a need for E-Verify could be helpful because we can verify legal status and lawful presence. So, yeah, I appreciate your points.
That could be challenged, but it's federally required at this point. So yes, the children of illegals are getting K through 12, and if anyone has a other answer than that, I think that is a federal requirement. You could actually pass a state law stopping it and then fight it in court. I think that's the only path. Does anyone know if there's another path? Maybe Representative Wisniewski? Yeah, I get it. But I think, unfortunately, we're on the hook for that unless we challenge it in court.
It sounds like we're about to wrap up. I just want to remind you, when you go to a surgeon, a surgeon fixes you with surgery because that's what he knows how to do. When you go to a lawyer's going to file a lawsuit for you because that's what he knows how to do. When you come to a legislator, we only know how to legislate or stop a bad bill. So when you come to us and when you're telling me these problems, I'm thinking, what can I do in Idaho? What can I do in Idaho? And we're doing what we can in Idaho. I'm sorry I can't help you with the feds. I'll lobby them, but I can do what I can in Idaho. And these bills that we've talked about today, they're good and going in the right direction to protect Idaho, regardless of what the feds do.
Okay, I want to kind of piggyback off of your question about traffic stops. If they're asked to produce a driver's license, registration, insurance, and back in the old administration, I know that question of are you illegal? Do you have any documentation? Sure, you can. Could not do that. Law enforcement could not make that. Could not ask that question or pose that question in any manner. Has that changed today?
With this law, that will change because any things you just mentioned, some of those are misdemeanors. But if it's just a traffic stop, where it's just a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit issue, no. But
the question should still be posed. And you pull them over.
Yeah, I heard you. Where's your license? Oh, you're driving without a license. That's not just an infraction. So you're there at the misdemeanor level right there.
Because I believe the lady that came over here, I believe she has something in her wallet that would show that she's an American citizen. Correct? There you go.
But
Right. So posing that question, if he can't produce any document, a green card, NPR, and something like that, to allow him to be here on a work visa, he should be detained and booked.
If you are driving without a license, then the officer has that option to exercise that with this new law.
But can he ask, okay, with the new law, because before they could not do that.
Correct.
And stuff like that. Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Thank you everyone so much for asking questions. Please give a round of applause for all three. Hey, just a quick note for everyone here. Sorry I concluded it early, but please join us next week to hear from Theo Wold, former Deputy Assistant to President Trump and current Director of Administrative State Project at the Claremont Institute. Thank you very much.